Hello, this is Jane, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 13 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the first article is from the first page under the byline of Hockey Canada. Players breached Code of Conduct, panel concludes. Appeal body upholds suspensions for 4 players acquitted in sexual assault case. And this is by Jacques Gallant. The 5 professional hockey players acquitted last year of sexually assaulting a woman in a hotel room in London, Ontario, breached Hockey Canada's Code of Conduct, an independent appeal panel has confirmed. While upholding that finding, the panel, made up of 3 retired judges, also recommended that player Alex Fermenton's suspension be lifted immediately, and the suspensions of the other 4 players should be maintained for various lengths of time. Cale Foote until November 10 of this year, Carter Hart until November 10, 2027, Dylan Dubé until November 10, 2028, and Michael McLeod until November 10, 2030. Hockey Canada announced on Wednesday that it had accepted the recommendations from retired justices John Laskin, Catherine Swinton, and Thomas McEwen. The organization's statement was the first confirmation of the ruling, which had previously been made by a separate panel in 2023, but remained under wraps until the conclusion of the appeal process. The panel's actual rulings were not released, and no details about their reasoning were provided. The high-profile court case against the players, which captured the country's attention, sparked a reckoning about the handling of sexual misconduct in professional sports. Formenton's lawyer, Daniel Brown, said his client is looking forward to rebuilding his life. Alex has spent much of his adult life living under the shadow of these false sexual assault accusations, and the consequences for his hockey career, his reputation, and his family have been profound, Brown said. Those lost years cannot be returned to him. The suspensions had meant the players were barred from participating in all Hockey Canada activities and programs, including competing at the Olympics or coaching a team. They had already been reinstated to play in the NHL last year, though only Hart and Dubé are currently doing so. Hockey Canada's investigation, led by Toronto lawyer Danielle Robitaille, began shortly after the organization received an allegation in June 2018 that a then 19-year-old woman had been sexually assaulted by members of the 2018 Canadian World Junior Championship team. The woman had returned to McLeod's hotel room in London where they had consensual sex, only for other players to show up afterward. The probe was put on hold after the complainant, known only as EM due to a publication ban, declined to participate, but was revived in 2022 amid public outrage after TSN reported on the settlement of EM's lawsuit alleging sexual assault by the players. The men were also charged criminally in 2024, and all were acquitted last summer by Superior Court Justice Maria Carroccia, who concluded that EM in fact consented to the sexual activity in the room and that she was not a credible or reliable witness. Hockey Canada said Wednesday that it can't release documents relating to Robitaille's probe or the hearings that led to the misconduct finding because its investigative and adjudicative processes are confidential. We recognize our role and responsibility to be a leader in delivering a sport that is rooted in safety, inclusiveness, and respect, the organization said. The next article is under the byline of real estate. Former RECO chair faces hearing. Regulator refers broker to discipline panel over trust account violations. And this is by Clary Feinstein. Ontario's real estate regulator is taking disciplinary action against its former chair over trust account violations nearly a year after the iPro Realty scandal. The Real Estate Council of Ontario, that's RECO, posted notices on its website last week referring both Katie Steinfeld, broker of record for the On the Block Realty Inc., and her brokerage to the Discipline Committee. The notice said Steinfeld failed to follow the rules and regulations under the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, consumer protection legislation in the real estate industry, for trust account violations. This action is based on failing to review and sign trust account reconciliations within required timelines and failing to ensure that the brokerage complied with trust account reconciliation and reporting requirements under the Act and regulations, said the August 5 notice. On the same day, another notice was posted for On the Block Realty, adding that the brokerage failed to keep trust funds separate from brokerage funds, improperly dispersed trust funds, and failed to report trust account shortfalls, as well as not complying with trust account and record-keeping requirements. In a written statement to the Star, Steinfeld and her husband Daniel Steinfeld, who is president of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, that's TRREB, and co-founder and broker at On the Block Realty, said no money was missing or misappropriated. Clients' funds were never in jeopardy. Agents' funds were never missing, their statement said. They said that in each case, money was deposited inadvertently and temporarily in the wrong account. The mistakes were caught during their monthly reconciliation process and rectified, they said. The amounts ranged from $442 to $7,000. In the case of the $7,000, the mistake was discovered immediately, and the money moved to the correct account within 24 hours. We did make an honest mistake in not preparing, reviewing, and signing reconciliation statements within the required timelines. In some cases, we were a few days late, in others a few weeks, but the reconciliation statements were always completed, the couple added, noting that the brokerage has taken proactive measures to tighten accounting procedures. We strongly believe in maintaining the highest professional standards in real estate. We believe that clients need to trust us, as do the agents who work for us. If a human mistake is made, we fix it and try to learn from it so that it is not repeated. The couple founded the brokerage together, offering real estate auctions to have transparent housing bids, a common practice in Australia and Britain. RECO would not comment on when it first discovered the trust account issues at the brokerage. Tess Lynn, RECO's Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations, said that RECO cannot comment on active compliance matters, as the Discipline Committee is an impartial decision-making body. Final decisions from the committee will be made public once available, she added. TRREB Chief Executive John D. Michel said he is aware of this regulatory proceeding and has established conflict of interest policies to guide the organization when these matters arise. TRREB takes its governance responsibilities seriously and remains focused on its mandate and on serving its members, he said in a written statement to the Star. Given RECO's jurisdiction over this matter, it would be inappropriate for TRREB to comment further. DeMichelle would not comment on whether Daniel Steinfeld is temporarily stepping down from his role as TRREB's president. Katie Steinfeld was the former chair of the board of directors at RECO and was a member of the Discipline and Appeals Committee. Steinfeld, along with the entire board at RECO, was fired by the provincial government in December 2025 in the wake of the iPro scandal. At the end of 2025, Premier Doug Ford's government took over RECO after widespread outrage over a deal the regulator had cut in August with iPro founders Fidel Colucci and Rui Alves, a former RECO board member. The deal allowed the men to avoid charges and fines after their lawyer disclosed a $10 million shortfall from their brokerage's trust accounts in May, just before a scheduled audit. The Ontario government appointed Jean Lapine as RECO's administrator, whose task is to reform the regulator. Brandon Rie, an Ottawa realtor who writes about industry governance, said trust account compliance is one of the most fundamental consumer protection responsibilities a brokerage has, so these are serious allegations. He said the test for RECO is how the matter proceeds, which should be an open and fair process, especially given the high-profile real estate couple. The next article is also from the front page, and it's under the byline of immigration. Processing delays slow Canada's race to attract global talent. Security screening backlog leaves recruited scholars in limbo. And this is by Nicholas Keong. Yufeng Wang was thrilled when a leading seismologist at the University of Toronto agreed to take him under her wing, and the secure funding for his doctoral studies was the icing on the cake. But the arrangement is now in serious jeopardy. The prospective PhD student from China is struggling to get his study permit in time to start in September, despite Ottawa's commitment to attract global talent to drive economic growth and boost innovation. I'm not sure if my department and the funding is going to wait for me, said Wang, who graduated from Jilin University in June with a bachelor's in geophysics and co-authored 2 published articles on tomography during his undergrad studies. Basically, I'm screwed. Recruiting international talent was a highlight of Prime Minister Mark Carney's 2025 budget, and the Immigration Department has a key role. A $1.7 billion investment is meant to lure world-class researchers and top doctoral and postdoctoral fellows, and to support universities in hiring internationally. While institutions can go all out to invite prospective talent, experts say success hinges on whether the recruits can make it to Canada in a timely way and secure permanent residence after their stay. The lack of a streamlined system and delays in security processing, they said, are hindering the effort. There's not a coordination between the immigration side and the science recruitment, said Christina Clark-Kazak, a professor in public and international affairs at the University of Ottawa. Many people were already starting to say, how are these people ever going to get visas? So you're investing all this time and they're coming here for a few years. What are they going to do at the end of that? What's the immigration pathway? Okay, I'm just turning to the inside page now, and while I do that, I'm going to quickly remind you you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And now I am back to the article about immigration and trying to bring scholars and PhDs and such to Canada. Okay, the Canada Global Impact Plus Research Talent Initiative has different streams, providing funding to hire world-leading research chairs and teams, early career researchers, top doctoral students, and postdoctoral researchers, as well as investment in infrastructure and facilities they need. The Star recently reported that after the US, China, Iran, and India were the top source countries of the 659 graduate students and postdocs from 72 countries selected in the first phase of the Training Awards program, focused on early career talent. Doctoral candidates will receive $40,000 annually for 3 years, and postdocs $70,000 annually for 2 years. Yet nationals from China, Iran, and India also top the list of immigration applicants who are referred to comprehensive security screening by the Canada Border Services Agency and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Immigration officials said assessments are conducted by its partners and processing times vary depending on the backlog and complexity of a case. It can take months or years. Wang got an admission offer from U of T in March and applied for his student visa in April. The application stalled due to security screening with no updates. Through a WeChat group of Canada-bound doctoral students, he said he has met 4 others in the same boat. I definitely understand how important security screening is, but a lot of countries make it much faster, said Wang. Some of my classmates applied to the U.S. They are clearly much more serious about the national security. Their security screening was concluded within a few months. The Immigration Department said it has streamlined the admission of graduate students and researchers and continues to prioritize study permit applications for doctoral programs with 14-day processing. However, it said security screening is done by CBSA and CSIS, and there's nothing it can do to speed it up. The border agency said the 3 government bodies are taking key steps to reduce screening backlogs, including training and onboarding additional officers and improving processes. The number began to fall for the first time since 2021, and further reductions are forecast. Currently, pending cases include 69,800 temporary resident applications, 31,300 permanent resident files, and 73,400 refugee claims. The Intelligence Service said in a statement that there continues to be a very high volume of applications for security screening, which CSIS is working with partners to diligently address. CSIS continues to take the necessary time required to process each file appropriately and safeguard the security of Canada and all Canadians. Immigration lawyer Gabriela Ramo said all government departments need to make a concerted effort to deliver international talent if Ottawa wants results. I'm not arguing we should cut corners on national security, said Ramo, a partner of EY Law LLP in Toronto. But is there any effort made to tell CBSA and CSIS this is a priority? You don't put it in a lineup. You start working on it right away. You're putting $1.7 billion into this, right? You want it to be successful. She said Ottawa must also start planning to retain the talent given the reduced permanent residence levels in the coming years, and can't just expect these doctoral graduates and researchers to navigate myriad possible pathways on their own to figure out a way to stay permanently afterward. If they leave, that knowledge goes with them, said Rabo. If they've got patents, the patents go with them. So this is the reason we're doing this, because we want these people to develop things, get patents here, build out Canadian capability, and make us world leaders in certain areas. Many doctoral graduates and researchers currently in Canada are already struggling to stay permanently. Reem Safira arrived in Quebec in 2019 for her PhD in environmental science at Université du Québec on Abitibi, I can't pronounce it, Temiscamingue. The Palestinian from the West Bank graduated in 2024 and is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Waterloo in research related to the recovery of critical metals in mining waste. She said it takes years to pursue doctoral studies and research, but age works against scholars and researchers like her in the skilled immigration system, because candidates start losing points each year after turning 30 until it hits zero at age 45. It makes it harder to compete in the talent pool despite their higher educational achievements and skills. Safira currently has a ranking score of 450, but the cutoff scores for the general talent draws have been above 500. She has been waiting for the first targeted talent draw for researchers ever since it was announced in February. There have been only 3 draws for STEM occupations since that category started in 2023, the last in April 2024. I have been here for 7 years, and I am still in limbo. And the 44-year-old whose postgraduate work permit expires in less than a year, my PhD was funded by Canadian mining industry partners and government organizations here. Canada has actually invested a lot in me, and I want to give back to this country. But unless there's a clear pathway for permanent residence, the University of Ottawa's Clark Kazak said she is not sure how appealing these postgraduate and postdoc opportunities are to international talent. Immigration lawyer and policy analyst Mario Bellissimo said the visa delay for the invited talent was foreseeable, given that many of the research areas such as AI, quantum, cybersecurity, biotech, and dual-use technologies are highly sensitive. Ottawa doesn't have to lower the security standard, but must build a faster, coordinated, and accountable process capable of screening the people it has deliberately recruited, he added. Security cannot become an indefinite administrative holding pattern. He urges Ottawa to create designated immigration coding and a special unit to process immigration applications of individuals selected by universities under the Global Talent Strategy, while coordinating departments and agencies to prioritize processing. Bellissimo also said the government should set aside a portion of the annual permanent residence intake for the recruited researchers. Markham immigration lawyer Sajad Malik said currently economic immigration selection favors candidates under 30 and prioritizes those proficient in French. If Ottawa is not going to launch a dedicated permanent residence pathway for these researchers, at least it should tweak the points grid to address the age penalty against them by giving more weight to the related education, Malik said. The strategy sounded great with the money commitment, said Malik, but it's not integrated with immigration. Unless you marry these policies together, you can't get the benefit of it. The next article is under the byline of court. Charges dropped in shooting of 15-year-old. Crown announces there's no possibility 3 accused will be convicted at trial. And this is by Jennifer Pagliaro. The Crown's office has withdrawn murder and related charges against 3 men accused in the West Toronto shooting death of 15-year-old Shakai Jack. Abdul Baba, 20, at the time of his arrest in Calgary, earlier this year, following a Canada-wide arrest warrant, had been charged with second-degree murder in the boy's death and was being held in custody. On Wednesday, in a Toronto courtroom, Crown Attorney David Newton told Ontario Court Justice Rick Libman there was no longer a possibility of conviction in the case. The Crown, of course, has an obligation at all stages of the prosecution to continually assess both the public interest in the prosecution and its prospect of conviction, Newton said. Where that prospect of conviction is less than reasonable, the Crown has an obligation to end that prosecution. Newton noted that Toronto police did a thorough investigation that included a significant amount of CCTV footage. But upon careful consideration of all the evidence available in this case, and including a consideration of what evidence there still might be to come, the Crown concludes, unfortunately, that it lacks a reasonable prospect of conviction in this case. Newton said the decision was difficult, especially considering the young age of the victim. In the same courtroom, Jaden Samuel James, 19 at the time of Jack's death, had his charge of accessory after the fact to murder withdrawn, with the Crown giving similar reasons. Rajveer Gill, 21 at the time, had his charge of accessory after the fact to murder withdrawn Wednesday afternoon. Jack and his friends were near Weston Road and James Street last June, possibly filming a music video, the lead detective said at the time, when they encountered another group. He was simply a young person meeting friends on a summer night, Detective Sergeant Philip Campbell told reporters earlier. His murder was a completely unprovoked act of violence that devastated his family. At the time, police emphasized that Jack had no connection to any criminal activity. He was just 15 years old and he had his whole life ahead of him, Campbell said in July. The next article is titled Canadian Stargazers Receive a Double Treat. A partial solar eclipse was visible across the Maritimes, Ontario, and Quebec, and other parts of Canada on Wednesday as the annual Perseid meteor shower also reaches its peak this week. The Canadian Space Agency said the timing of the eclipse and the amount of sun coverage differed by location. Partial eclipses happen when the moon passes between Earth and the sun and covers part of our star, and they should be viewed with special glasses to prevent eye damage. More than 53% of the sun in St. John's, NL, was obstructed by the moon at the eclipse's peak, while roughly 30% of it was covered in Charlottetown and Halifax. The moon covered a small portion of the sun in Toronto beginning at 12:55 p.m., reaching a peak of 8% coverage at 1:40 p.m. The sun coverage reached more than 18% in Montreal and 15% in Ottawa at the peak of the eclipse, which hit totality in parts of Europe. Millions of people crowded into cities and towns in Spain to witness the event, which was the country's first total solar eclipse in more than a century. By the time it got to a small patch of Portugal and to Spain just before sunset, totality dwindled to a minute or so. The eclipse then ended over the Mediterranean. The last widely visible total solar eclipse in North America, including parts of central and eastern Canada, occurred on April 8, 2024. Skywatchers will also be able to see the Perseid meteor shower this week with 60 to 100 shooting stars per hour. Walter Stoddard, a senior scientist at the Ontario Science Centre, said the best chance to see the Perseids is after midnight and into early morning of Thursday before dawn. That's when you want to be looking. So from midnight on, let's say, when the sky is darkest. You also want to find a place where you don't have a lot of light. The Perseid meteor shower happens each year when Earth passes fields in space where asteroids or comets left debris behind, Stoddard added. A comet called Swift-Tuttle, discovered in July 1862, passes by every 133 years and leaves a deposit of debris along its path. As we orbit the sun every year, we pass through the debris field, and some of it gets caught up in our gravity, goes through our atmosphere and burns up. Those are the shooting stars that we see, the little bits of dust and debris left behind by the passing comet. Stoddard said the debris that burns in Earth's atmosphere is not dense and contains very small minerals or ice the size of a grain of rice. Typically, if you have a meteorite, something that's survived and landed that we can pick up here on Earth, he said, you'll have something that might be made of iron. They'll often have metal in them so that they're able to survive the heat of entry of coming through our atmosphere. And I need to pause here to remind you, you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is titled Blazing Speed of Horrific Wildfire Caught Crews Off Guard, Ebby says. Surging bald range blaze in British Columbia's Okanagan region has forced more than 20,000 to flee homes. And this is by Brianna Charlebois. Let's see. Premier David Ebby says a horrific wildfire that has forced 20,000 people out of their homes in British Columbia's South Okanagan region moved at a dizzying speed, forcing wildfire crews to pivot from fighting flames to helping residents flee. The blaze that surged last Friday may represent a new normal when it comes to the speed of wildfires, Ebby told a briefing in Penticton, British Columbia, where many evacuees have gathered. Ebby visited the reception center set up for evacuees in Penticton earlier Wednesday and said he saw people devastated by the loss of their homes. A lot of emotions in there, obviously, he told reporters as he left the building. Ebby said the death of an 80-year-old woman trying to flee the fire is a tragic loss. Still, the premier told the briefing there was an overwhelming spirit of coming together to help those affected by the Bald Range fire. The blaze spanned about 184 square kilometers on Wednesday, having grown by about 6.5 square kilometers overnight. Official details of the losses inflicted by the fire have been scant, while videos circulating online show homes reduced to blackened foundations in the community of Falder, home to about 215 residents west of Summerland. An update from Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen said rapid damage assessments started Tuesday in areas north and south of Summerland, but it's still an active fire zone posing safety risks, and there was no timeline for when evacuees may be able to return home, the district said. Jonathan Keisman is among the evacuees in Penticton. He runs a pharmacy in Summerland and said he was worried about patients in his community. As a healthcare professional, I want to make sure that their medications are still synced and they're still getting them, he said in an interview. He said the oncoming inferno almost brought tears to my eyes as he drove away. Summerlin's a wonderful community, wonderful people, and to see something like that coming over the hill and ravaging your town was just, it was very scary, yeah, and very sad. A statement from the province said hotel rooms were available for evacuees in Penticton, Kelowna, and West Kelowna, along with 2 reception centers for those needing help. An evacuee helpline is available from 7:30 to 11 p.m. daily. The province asks evacuees who can stay with friends or family to do so, while officials continued to work with tourism and hospitality sector, as well as the federal government to secure additional accommodation, it said. Highway 97 remained closed from north of Penticton to south of Peachland. An update from the BC Wildfire Service on Wednesday said crews had been working to establish control lines along the fire's southern flank. It said the fire was expected to show rank 2 and 3 behavior on a 6-level scale with intermittent torching of trees. Thunderstorm activity was possible later Wednesday, which could fan the flames. Fire behavior would depend on the severity of convective instability associated with thunderstorms, which can produce erratic winds, the service said. Cloud cover was expected to increase, which could help offset the fire behavior by reducing direct sunlight and daytime heating, it added. There are about 100 blazes across British Columbia, with roughly half burning out of control. Environment Canada downgraded an air quality warning for parts of BC's southern interior on Wednesday, replacing the orange level advisory with a yellow one spanning areas east of Pemberton to the Kootenay region. Orange level warnings remained for Fraser Canyon and the South Okanagan from Osoyoos to north of Penticton. Wildfires this season have destroyed homes around Clinton, British Columbia, and in the South Caribou region, as well as on Okanagan Indian Band lands in the North Okanagan. Telecommunications giant TELUS has said it was devoting $2 million to communities affected by the fires, aimed at providing network connectivity, data top-ups, and bill credits for customers. The next article is titled, Horwath Reveals Abusive Relationship. Disclosure follows dispute over house with her ex-partner. And this is by Kate McCullough. Hamilton Mayor Andrea Horwath says she is a survivor of an abusive relationship. The revelation came amid a months-long legally contentious dispute over a dilapidated West Avenue North house Horwath owns and where her former partner Ben Leonetti lives. The statement, shared on Wednesday afternoon, followed a hearing earlier in the day during which the city's Property Standards Committee voted to reject a late appeal of an order requiring Horwath to do major repairs to the home. For many years, I kept a painful and deeply personal part of my life private, she said in a statement. As a legal dispute involving a property occupied by my former partner has unfolded publicly, I have watched silence leave room for assumptions that do not reflect the reality of why I stayed away. The truth is that I left an abusive relationship, and after criminal harassment charges and a no-contact order, I did what many survivors do. I kept my distance. Court records show Leonetti was charged with criminal harassment in November 2018, and the charge was stayed in early 2020. Leonetti confirmed a no-contact order exists. When asked for comment on the alleged abuse, Leonetti laughed. Responding to anything that has any of that commentary to it would mean that I would be validating anything the mayor has to say. Nobody understands being abusive more than the mayor, he added. Leonetti denied the allegations and declined to comment further. In her statement, Horwath said she is tired of being silent. I want every survivor in Hamilton to know there should be no shame in choosing safety, in setting boundaries, or in telling the truth when you are ready, said Horwath, who was the provincial NDP leader for 13 years until 2022. She was elected mayor in October 2022. In 2023, Hamilton joined dozens of municipalities across the province in declaring intimate partner and gender-based violence an epidemic. This, Horwath said, means we all have a responsibility, not only to say the right words, but to respond to survivors with compassion, care, and understanding. Behind public issues and legal proceedings, there are often deeply human stories, shaped by fear, trauma, and the struggle to feel safe. The statement comes ahead of an October 26 municipal election. The mayor has declared her intention to run again, but has not officially entered the race. In the statement, the mayor also said she was disappointed by the committee's decision. I respect the process and will continue working toward resolving the outstanding issues with this property and closing this painful chapter of my life, she said. The mayor appealed the property standards order issued in January related to required building and roof repairs, which had a May 1 deadline, because the work can only be completed if the property is vacant. The appeal, noted in city documents as a late appeal, was received April 30 beyond the standard 14-day window to appeal. In July, the city and Horwath's lawyer made a joint submission to extend the compliance date on the property standards order by more than 2 years to September 30, 2028, to allow for an ongoing family court matter to be resolved. The mayor's lawyer, Meredith Baker, said on Wednesday the matter is expected to be heard and decided by July of 2028. Horwath is the registered owner of the home. Leonetti, the only occupant, has claimed an ownership stake in the property, which is expected to be decided in family court. The appeal was adjourned to Wednesday after committee chairperson Thomas Lofchick, a retired Superior Court judge, raised concerns about the committee's jurisdictional ability to hear the late appeal. The mayor had asked a court earlier this year to evict Leonetti from the home so it could be demolished, but a judge rejected her application. Horwath's lawyer said the required work is expected to cost at least $131,000, compared with about $26,000 to demolish. She has already been charged about $59,000 for work completed by the city following emergency orders prompted by assessments by Horwath and the city. I understand that, as the legal owner, I have responsibilities for this property, and I am committed to seeing them through, Horwath said. Hamiltonians also deserve to understand the painful circumstances that led us here. And before I continue, let me pause once more to remind you you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is titled Man Linked to Alleged Gun for Hire Network Facing New Robbery Charges. This is by Joshua Smith and Abby O'Brien. A man with alleged ties to what police described as a sprawling gun for hire network operating across the GTA is facing new charges in connection with 2 attempted bank robberies in the Niagara region this year. Police say 18-year-old Jayon Berger was among several suspects arrested Monday in connection with the two incidents in the towns of Wainfleet and Pelham, Ontario. The incident in Wainfleet happened on the afternoon of March 4. Police say three masked suspects, one armed with a handgun, attempted to enter the front foyer of a bank but were unable to get into the bank due to security measures and fled the scene. Police did not specify in a news release issued Tuesday when the alleged attempted robbery in Pelham took place. The months-long investigation saw Berger charged with one count each of attempting to commit the indictable offense of robbery and disguise with intent. Berger had previously been released from custody in April after being charged in connection with a shooting at a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym in Etobicoke and another targeting the home of an Oakville man tied to Canadian waste giant GFL in March. He was shot in the latter incident, which was under investigation by police in Halton as of June. Berger was released from custody again on Tuesday in connection with the Niagara charges. As part of the release conditions, he was ordered to remain in the presence of one of his sureties at all times and inside the North York residence at all times, except for medical appointments or to meet with counsel. He will also be subject to GPS monitoring. And this next article is from the Niagara region. Woman's death now considered a homicide case. Police have identified the woman whose remains were found during a home demolition in Niagara Falls, Ontario, nearly 3 years ago and are now treating her death as a homicide. Brenda Marie LeBlanc's body had likely been at the property for many years, potentially as far back as the 1990s. Niagara police said in a news release on Wednesday. They said LeBlanc, a New Brunswick native, lived in the Niagara region in the 1990s when she was in her 30s. The remains were found during a demolition in November 2023, but the identity of the deceased was initially unknown. The next article is titled, City on Track for Record Year of Lithium Battery Fires. This is by Joshua Smith. Another lithium-ion battery blaze broke out in Toronto on Wednesday evening as the city appears to be grappling with a record pace of fires involving the commonly used power source. Toronto fire crews responded to reports of a serious fire in a garage that then spread to a house around 4 p.m. near the area of Dufferin Street and Wilson Avenue in North York. One person was treated for smoke inhalation, said a Toronto fire spokesperson. The fire was related to a lithium-ion battery, they said. The blaze follows an early morning 2-alarm fire also involving lithium-ion batteries on George Street, north of Dundas Street East, just before 6 a.m. Firefighters found the source of the blaze in a 4th-floor unit and put out the fire. 4 people were in the unit and one was taken to the hospital with injuries that weren't life-threatening, according to paramedics. The batteries were packaged and disposed of by Hazardous Materials Team, Toronto Fire said. Toronto Fire has responded to 81 incidents involving lithium-ion batteries this year, Toronto Fire Chief Jim Jessup said Wednesday on social media. That number represents a 33.3% increase from the 60 recorded at the same point in 2025, Toronto Fire spokesperson Deepak Chagar said. There were 91 incidents by the end of last year, and Toronto appears to be on pace to match or exceed that number with a little over 4 months to go in 2026. The next article is from the York region. Boy 11 is cleaning up by turning a dirty chore into a business. Entrepreneur gains online following, washing trash bins. And there's a picture here of Ashton Meyer of East Gwillimbury. He started a door-to-door business cleaning neighbors' trash bins. One of his cleaning videos has racked up more than 20 million views. An 11-year-old York Region boy has built a viral business by taking on the dirty work of cleaning his neighbors' trash bins. East Gwillimbury's Ashton Meyer is the founder of Your Bin Cleaning, going door to door offering to clean homeowners' bins for $10. After launching his business in May, Meyer started documenting his sales pitch on social media with the help of his mom. His videos have since garnered millions of views and gained him 120,000 followers. It was crazy, like I never thought I would make it this far. I never thought I'd have a video that went viral, he said, adding that it was his dream to become a big YouTuber when he was 9. The idea for the business started when Meyer's father suggested his son help the older adults in his neighborhood by bringing their garbage bins from their garages to their curbs and then back inside after collection. The young entrepreneur said he wanted to include a garbage bin cleaning service alongside this, and eventually that evolved into his door-to-door business. Meyer didn't have prior experience cleaning bins, but he says, our bins were dirty. Everybody else's were dirty, so I was just like, I should clean them. Although Meyer is a pro at his job today, when he first went door to door, he found it difficult and had to quickly learn how to face rejection. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I was going to be bad at it, and so I was actually crying on my first door. But it's easier to take rejection now. He says he keeps a positive mindset when someone says no to his service and leaves them a flyer, because if it's a no today, he hopes for a yes tomorrow. One of his videos posted in June has accumulated more than 20 million views and 1.7 million likes. His business has even caught the attention of U.S. news outlets such as Forbes and CBS. Myers works 2 days a week cleaning bins, sometimes up to 3 bins for one customer, and goes door to door pitching his business about once a week. He says he can clean bins for up to 3 customers on those days. His parents have been very supportive of Meyer, driving him to faraway neighborhoods to do his job. We're so proud of him. He works very hard, Alyssa said of her son. He does a lot of things by himself, and we're blown away by the response. When it gets colder, Meyer said he plans to shift his bin cleaning service to leaf raking and snow shoveling, using the money he earns to buy the necessary equipment. And the next article is from the Halton region. Oakville bans data center plans for a year. Interim bylaw allows town to review policies, zoning rules after tech firm purchases 25-acre site. And this is by David Leah. The town of Oakville has imposed a 1-year ban on the development of data centers in the community so it can study their potential effects. Council voted during a special meeting this week to bypass an interim control bylaw that creates a 1-year moratorium on new data centers, enterprise computing facilities, and similar high-intensity digital processing facilities. The temporary pause will allow the town to complete a review of its official plan policies and zoning regulations for these type of facilities. It will also explore potential issues related to noise, vibration, emissions, and land use compatibility, as well as municipal responsibilities related to environmental sustainability, energy supply and affordability, water supply, and other utility infrastructure. Over the last several months, we've heard concerns about large-scale data center development across the GTA. It's not just an Oakville issue, it's a Canada-wide issue, said Councillor Tom Adams, Ward 6, who brought the moratorium motion forward. These projects are complex. They are energy intensive and they are capable of reshaping land use patterns in ways municipalities must fully understand before making long-term decisions. That's precisely why further study is not only appropriate, it's responsible, he said. Oakville deserves a clear evidence-based understanding of how data centers interact with our electricity, our water, our wastewater, and our telecommunications infrastructure, our environmental goals, our employment lands, the character of our neighborhoods, and the health of our residents. A Realtor.ca listing for a neighboring property noted the 25-acre site at 3480 9th Line had been purchased by Hive Buzz HPC, that's High Performance Computing, a division of HIVE Digital Technologies, for the development of a 320 megawatt AI infrastructure data center. The listing said the company is hoping to have the center operational by the second half of 2027. As of Tuesday, the town of Oakville said no development application had been received for an AI data center. HIVE Digital Technologies did not respond when asked if it was planning to build a data center in Oakville. However, the company did issue a news release on May 18 announcing plans to build a $3.5 billion AI infrastructure facility, also known as an AI Gigafactory, in the Toronto Waterloo Innovation Corridor. HIVE said the project would create 800 jobs plus additional construction jobs, and that the facility would be designed for high efficiency using closed-loop cooling systems. Property records confirm that Hive Buzz HPC, a subsidiary of HIVE Digital Technologies, purchased the property at 3480 North Line from the Halton region for $12 million in May. News that a data center could be coming to Oakville spread quickly on social media, with many residents voicing their concerns. Unfortunately, I have run out of time and I can't finish the article. You can call the office at 716-821-5555 if you would like to hear the rest of this article. And I will close with, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 13 issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Jane. Thank you for listening.